In this video, we're going to study the second character in Theophrastus Characters, and that's the Adulator. So we're going to read through this lesson together, Theophrastus' treatment of the Adulator, and then talk a little bit about a passage in sacred scripture that helps us to see the importance of understanding this character and avoiding this vice in our own lives. So let's go ahead and read together lesson 2 in Theophrastus' Characters on the Adulator. Theophrastus writes, "Adulation is the base converse of an inferior with one from whom he seeks some sordid advantage." I'll read that again and then explain this because it's a very important sentence. Adulation is the base converse of an inferior with one from whom he seeks some sordid advantage. Base converse. What's meant there is bad behavior or bad speech, bad thinking, bad acting. It's base converse. By base, it means low, and converse is where we get the word conversation from. Okay? Adulation is a form of base converse, bad manners. It's the base converse of an inferior. What an inferior is a person who is under someone else in society. An example would be a child is an inferior and his parent is his superior. A person who works is an inferior and his boss is a superior. In religion, we are inferiors and God is our superior. So adulation is the base converse of an inferior with one from whom, the superior, he seeks some sordid advantage. Sordid means dirty or unholy, unjust. All right? Adulation is the base converse of an inferior with a superior from whom he seeks some sordid advantage. Now let's just think for a second here. There's nothing wrong with an inferior seeking some advantage from his superior. That's the motive of being a good employee or a good obedient child or a true worshiper of God. We seek, it's no secret, we seek some advantage by doing good. That's not what this is talking about. This is talking about seeking some sordid advantage, some dirty or unholy advantage, not a good and true and just advantage. It's an inferior communicating with or acting with a superior in order to gain some bad thing, some benefit or advantage that he shouldn't have or doesn't deserve. That's what adulation is. So the adulator does the following. Walking with his patron or superior, he says something like this. "Mark you not how the eyes of all are turned towards you? There's no other man in this city who attracts so much attention. It was but yesterday that the estimation in which you are held was publicly acknowledged in the portico. There were more than 30 persons sitting together, and in the course of conversation it was inquired who merited to be called the most worthy citizen of the state, when one and all agreed that you were the man." So one example of adulation is flattery. Here we see the inferior just pouring the flattery on his superior. "Oh, look, everyone's looking at you. Look at how everyone pays attention to you. In fact, the other day, everyone was talking and they were saying that you are the greatest man in the whole state. All just flattery, flattery, flattery. Okay? Adulation is the base converse of an inferior with a superior from whom he seeks some sordid advantage. One method used by the adulator is flattery. Let's learn some more. While he proceeds with discourse of this sort, he employs himself in picking a piece of lint off from the great man's cloak, or if a gust of wind has lodged an atom of straw in the man's curls, in his hair, he carefully removes it. And smiling, he adds, "See now, because these 2 days I have not been with you, your beard is filled with gray hairs. And yet, to say truth, no man of your years has a head of hair so black." So here we see the adulator giving unnatural and unneeded attention to the appearance of his superior. So first it was flattery. Now we have this ridiculous overreaction and concern about the appearance of his superior's hair or clothing, which is another form of flattery. Picking a piece of dust off his coat as if he can't bear to see his superior with a single speck of straw in his hair. Just this overreacting, ridiculous flattery, bribery, trying to get something from his superior. When his patron is about to speak, this parasite, what a parasite is, an insect may be a parasite, like a tick, because it lives off of another animal. So a tick will get into a dog's skin or onto a person's skin and will suck blood out of that person. That's what a parasite does. They suck the blood out of someone else and try to live off someone else. When his patron is about to speak, this parasite imposes silence on all present, pretends that this is so important and everyone needs to be quiet, quiets everyone down, and does so as an act to be seen by his superior when he does this. He himself, while he listens, gives signals of applause. He makes sure that his superior sees him applauding for what he says. And at every pause, he exclaims, "Well said, well said." If the speaker is pleased to be facetious or comical or sarcastic, to use some sort of a joke or humorous expression, the adulator forces a grin, smiles, makes sure that his superior sees him smile at the remark. Or he puts his cloak, his coat over his mouth as if he's striving to suppress a burst of laughter, like he just thinks his superior is so funny that he can't hold it in. When they're walking, he commands those whom they may meet in a narrow way, narrow path, to give place or get out of the way, while his friend passes on, as if he's so concerned for his superior. He provides himself with apples and pears, with goodies, which he presents to the children of the family of his superior, in the presence of the father, his superior, and kissing the children exclaims, "What worthy offspring of a noble stock! What beautiful children from such great parents!" Flattering and flattering by giving gifts to the children even. Okay? When the great man would fit himself with a pair of shoes, the adulator comments, "Your foot is of a more beautiful make than the shoes you're trying." He tells his patron that his foot is more beautiful than the shoes. Flattery. He runs before his patron when he visits his friends to give notice of his approach, saying, "He comes to thee," acting as if his arrival is so important. And remember, he's doing this not because he genuinely believes this, but because he's trying to flatter and bribe and gain some sordid advantage from his superior. He runs before him and announces and says, "He's coming to thee. He comes to thee." And then he goes back to his patron or superior and says, "I have announced you," as if he did him such a great favor. When occasion offers, he's ready to give his help in the smallest matters. He will run to the market in a twinkling of an eye for a bunch of kitchen herbs. At the table, he is the first to praise the wine. Leaning on the flattered man, he says, "You eat but delicately." And taking a morsel from the table, he exclaims, How exquisite is this?" And then he inquires, "Are you cold? Do you wish for a cloak?" And forthwith he throws the cloak about his superior, pretending to be concerned that his superior is comfortable. And stooping forward, he whispers in his ear, or while speaking to others, he rolls his eyes at his patron. At the theater, taking the cushions from the servant whose business it is to adjust them for his master, he performs this office himself. In a word, he is always ready to declare that the house is well built, the grounds well planted, or that the portrait is an exact likeness. And truly, you will find such a fellow willing to say or do anything by which he may hope to curry favor from his superior. This is the character of the adulator. Now, as I said at the beginning, there's nothing wrong with seeking to do good to one's superior and gain some just and deserved advantage. That's one of the motivations of doing good to a superior, is that we might be promoted or given some opportunity to do better things. That's good and natural and just. What's different about the adulator is that he uses base converse, bad manners, to try and bribe some sordid advantage out of his superior. If we read through this again and pay attention to what the adulator is doing, what we'll notice is that he's never actually doing his job. He's never actually doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's always taking upon himself to do something else. He's got to talk to his superior and tell him what the men in town were saying. He's got to hurry up and pick the lint off his superior's cloak. He's got to make sure that he applauds and smiles and laughs when his superior speaks. He has to praise and flatter and give gifts to the master's children. That's not his job. He's got to praise the master's appearance. He's got to run ahead and announce his superior's coming. He's got to run to the market for his superior. He's got to praise the wine at the table as if his superior needs to hear the judgment from an inferior. That's not his job. But he takes it upon himself to try and flatter and praise and please his superior by base converse to gain some sordid advantage. So one thing I want you to see in the adulator is that he tries to gain advantage from his master or his superior, not by doing what his superior tells him to do, which is the natural and just way to earn favor, but by doing all of these other things. And what you'll notice about these things, if you look carefully, is that all of the things that the adulator does, they all appeal to the weaknesses of the character of his superior. They're actually disrespectful and dishonorable. They appeal to the weaknesses of another person. And what that does is it says that the inferior actually believes that his superior is a weak person morally and will be impressed by these, vicious things like flattery, praise of his appearance, a celebration of anything he says, prideful announcing of his entry into a crowd, praising his children and telling him how beautiful his children are, telling him how delicious his food is, how well built his house is, how beautiful his property is, on and on and on. He appeals to all of these base things that he assumes are present in his superior. So there's this sort of silent disrespectfulness by this attempt to gain favor from a superior by appealing to weaknesses rather than by respecting the superior, trying to encourage that superior to be as virtuous as possible, and just doing his job as an inferior, just obeying the will of his superior. I can give you a good example of this just from family life. There may be a time when a parent tells a child to, go clean your bedroom. And the child won't clean the bedroom, but the child wants a dessert. So instead of just being obedient to the parent and cleaning the bedroom, the child goes outside and picks flowers and brings in a big handful of flowers and gives them to his mother and says, "Here, Mommy, I picked you a big bouquet of flowers." But the mother didn't ask for flowers. And so a mother may respond and say, "I didn't ask for flowers. Did you clean your room?" And it will turn out that the child didn't clean the room, but he's seeking to gain favor in some other way by appealing to some weakness in his superior. Like he just wants to please his mother and make his mother feel like she's loved by a son, but that son doesn't obey her. And so it's not true respect, it's adulation. A good example of this in Scripture can be found in the Old Testament. In 1 Samuel chapter 15. I hope you read the Bible because the Bible provides us with not only character stories like Theophrastus does, but divinely inspired lessons that are even more valuable than those of Theophrastus. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, we read about King Saul. And King Saul was made king of the Jews by God. And God, at one time, told King Saul that he wanted him to go and kill a tribe of people known as the Amalekites, because they were a wicked, sinful people that God wished to judge and punish. And so he sent Saul and the Jews to go and fight against them and put them to death and destroy everything that they have as a punishment. What Saul did was go down and fight against the Amalekites and defeat them. But he didn't put them all to death, and he didn't destroy all of their possessions. He didn't do what God told him to do. He did something else. And what we read in 1 Samuel 15 Verse 20. Okay, what happens, just for a little more detail, is the prophet Samuel comes to Saul to tell him that he has sinned by not obeying what God said, by keeping some of these things and not by destroying everything. And this is Saul's response to Samuel. Saul says, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took from the spoil sheep and oxen, the best of the things which should have been utterly destroyed. They took them to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God. So this is an example of adulation. God said to destroy everything. The superior told his inferiors to go and destroy everything. The inferiors, though, say that no, we shouldn't destroy everything. What we should do is keep the best stuff and offer that to God. So they kept the possessions of the Amalekites, thinking that they would please God by offering them to him as sacrifices. And this is a form of adulation. But Samuel responds to Saul and says, does the Lord have as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. To obey is better than sacrifice. Now, what Saul and the people tried to do was gain favor from God by offering something that they considered valuable, and by disrespecting God, they assumed that God would also consider it to be valuable. But what Samuel tells us is that God is not some immoral man up in heaven. He's not some person who is attracted by beautiful things. What pleases God is obedience. Obedience is better than sacrifice. God is not interested in our gifts. He's not moved by our flattery. He cannot be moved by bribes from us as we, offer up sacrifices and gifts that we invent ourselves that God has never asked for. We're inferiors. God is our superior. He gives us commands, and the way that we show our affection and respect for God and seek to justly earn true benefits is by being obedient. That's what an inferior does rightly towards a superior. What the adulator does is disobey his superior and try to establish his own way to obtain advantages that are not good. And when he does so, he dishonors and disrespects his superior because he says by his actions that he believes his superior can be bribed by flattery, by gifts, and so on. And we're tempted to do this in religion as well. A child is tempted to do this in how they act towards their parents. A worker is tempted to do this with how they act towards their boss, maybe trying to buy their boss a nice Christmas gift instead of being a good worker. Okay, so adulation is the base converse, the improper behavior of an inferior with one from whom he seeks some sordid or unjust advantage. All right? That's the character of the adulator. So, for reflection in our own lives, if we're in the position of an inferior, with respect to someone else who's our superior, our duty to them is obedience and respect. We gain advantages from them justly by acting as inferiors should, by being respectful, by subjecting ourselves to them, and seeking their reward for our good work. We don't seek reward unjustly by appealing to their human weaknesses through flattery, gifts, bribes, and things like that. That's adulation. It also applies to our religion. It applies to our work in the world. It applies to family life and so on. On the other hand, as superiors, we have to beware of those who are our inferiors, who seek advantages from us by appealing to our weaknesses by adulation. So we have to avoid acting like adulators, and we also have to watch out for the bribes and flattery of adulators in our own lives. So that's Theophrastus' second character, the adulator. I hope that's a helpful walk through the reading. It's now time for you to go and study the lesson for yourself and prepare for your assessment. And we'll move on and continue our study of Theophrastus' characters. God bless.